I saw humans take the battlefield and comprehended their fearsome reputation. Part 1. The Whispers of War. Ambassador Ha had served the collective for 40 cycles. She had negotiated treaties between warring empires. She had brokered peace deals that saved billions of lives. She had seen the rise and fall of civilizations across a dozen star systems. In all that time, she thought she understood the nature of war and the species that waged it. She was wrong. The Pale Crescent was a neutral trading station at the edge of contested space. It floated in the darkness between three major territories, a place where merchants and diplomats gathered to do business without the threat of violence. The station housed over 3,000 civilians from 100 different species. They lived together in relative peace, bound by the simple understanding that profit required stability. Ha had arrived 2 weeks earlier to finalize a mining agreement. The work was boring but necessary. She spent her days in conference rooms, reviewing contracts and listening to endless debates about mineral rights. At night, she would walk through the station's observation deck and watch the stars. It was a quiet life, a safe life. Then the Dominion fleet arrived. Ha was eating her morning meal when the alarms began. She rushed to the command center along with dozens of other diplomats and station officials. What she saw on the main display screen made her blood run cold. 800 warships hung in the void outside the station. They were massive vessels, each one bristling with weapons and armored in dark metal. At their center floated the flagship of Warlord, a dreadnought the size of a small moon. The Dominion had conquered half the galaxy through brutal force. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not take. There was no negotiating with them. There was only submission or death. The station commander, a thin-named N, tried to establish communication. His hands shook as he worked the controls. When his face appeared on the screen, Ha felt her feathers flatten against her body in fear. The warlord was a reptilian creature with scales the color of dried blood. His eyes were yellow and cold, like a predator studying prey. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "This station now belongs to the Dominion," announced. "You will surrender all resources, all ships, and all personnel. Those who comply will be allowed to serve. Those who resist will be destroyed. You have one cycle to decide." The transmission ended. Silence filled the command center. Ha looked around at the faces of her fellow diplomats. She saw terror in their eyes. The Pale Crescent had no military presence, no weapons capable of fighting back. They were merchants and bureaucrats, not soldiers. Against 800 warships, they had nothing. Then a new voice cut through the silence. "This is Commander Park of the United Earth Navy vessel Boundless Dawn. We are moving to intercept the Dominion fleet. All civilian vessels should remain docked until further notice." Ha turned to the display screen. A single ship was moving away from the station, heading directly toward the enemy armada. It was small, barely larger than a cargo hauler. Its hull was painted in dark blue and gray, and its design was blocky and functional rather than elegant. The word Boundless Dawn was written along its side in human script. One frigate, 200 crew, against 800 warships. "They are insane," and whispered. "The humans are completely insane." Ha had heard stories about humans, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had. They were a young species, barely 3 centuries into spacefaring civilization. They came from a planet called Earth, a death world where everything seemed designed to kill its inhabitants. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent. The native life forms were predators that hunted without mercy. The humans themselves were said to be persistent predators. They did not run fast or fight with natural weapons. Instead, they chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They pumped their bodies full of chemical compounds that let them ignore pain and fear. They formed tight social bonds and fought not as individuals but as packs. Ha had always dismissed these stories as exaggeration. Every species had myths about itself. The humans were simply trying to seem more impressive than they actually were. Now, watching that tiny ship position itself between the station and the Dominion Armada, she felt the first seeds of doubt. Must have felt amused rather than threatened. He opened a communication channel to the human vessel. His laughter echoed through the command center. "One ship," the warlord said. "You send one ship against my fleet. Tell me, human, do you wish to die so badly?" Commander Park's response was calm and clear. Her voice carried no fear, no hesitation. She spoke as if she were discussing the weather rather than facing certain death. "Warlord, the Pale Crescent Station is under the protection of the United Earth Navy. You will withdraw your fleet immediately, or we will make you withdraw it. This is your only warning." The silence that followed was absolute. Ha could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She waited for to laugh again, to mock the human's foolish bravery. Instead, the warlord's eyes narrowed. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. It might have been surprise. It might have been something else entirely. "You have one cycle," said finally. "Use it to say goodbye to your loved ones." The transmission ended. Ha watched the human frigate hold its position. It did not retreat. It did not try to run. It simply waited like a guard dog standing before a pack of wolves. She turned to him. "What do we know about the humans, about their military capabilities?" The station commander shook his head. "Very little. They are newcomers to galactic society. Their technology is inferior to most major powers. They should not pose any threat to a force this size." "Then why," Ha asked slowly, "does seem worried?" And had no answer. As the hours passed, Ha found herself returning to the observation deck again and again. She watched the human frigate floating in the void, so small against the backdrop of enemy warships. She thought about the 200 souls aboard that vessel. They must know they could not win. They must understand that they were going to die. And yet they stayed. That night, Ha dreamed of fire and screaming. She dreamed of a species that refused to surrender, even when surrender was the only logical choice. She dreamed of predators that did not hunt for food, but for something far more dangerous. She dreamed of humans. When she woke, the cycle was almost over. In a few short hours, the Dominion would attack, and Ha would finally learn whether the stories about humanity were myths or warnings. "I saw humans take the battlefield, and comprehended their fearsome reputation." Part 2, The Impossible Stand. The cycle ended at dawn station time. Ha stood in the command center with dozens of other diplomats and officials, watching the display screens with growing dread. Outside, the Dominion fleet had formed into attack formation. 800 warships arranged themselves in a massive crescent, their weapons charging with deadly light. And between them and the station, the boundless dawn held its ground. Ha had spent the night trying to learn more about humans. She accessed every database on the station, read every report she could find. What she discovered made no sense. Humans came from a world where the very air tried to kill them. Their planet had earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, and floods. The animals were venomous, the plants were poisonous, and the weather changed without warning. Any sensible species would have died out long ago. Instead, humans had conquered their world and spread to the stars. Their bodies were strange. They could survive injuries that would kill most species. They could push themselves past the point of exhaustion through pure willpower. They produced chemical compounds in their blood that let them ignore pain and fear. When wounded, they could keep fighting long after they should have collapsed. But most disturbing of all was their social structure. Humans formed bonds with each other that went beyond logic. They would die for their families, their friends, even complete strangers. They had a concept called sacrifice that seemed central to their identity. The idea of giving up one's life so that others might live was not just accepted among humans. It was celebrated. Ha did not understand this. In her culture, survival was the highest priority. You protected yourself first, your family second, and everyone else not at all. The idea of dying for strangers was madness. Yet here were the humans, doing exactly that. A communication signal flashed on the main display. Someone aboard the Boundless Dawn was broadcasting on an open frequency. The voice belonged to a young woman, sharp and confident. "Sergeant to all hands. Final equipment check in 10 minutes. I want everyone suited up and ready to move. And someone tell Lieutenant to turn down that music. I can hear it through the bulkhead." Another voice responded, male and slightly amused. "The music stays, Sergeant. It helps me concentrate." "It sounds like dying animals." "It's called rock and roll. Show some respect for cultural heritage." Ha stared at the display in disbelief. The humans were joking. They were facing certain death, and they were making jokes about music. A third voice joined the conversation. This one was deeper, calmer, carrying the weight of authority. "Commander Park. All hands, this is the commander. The Dominion will attack within the hour. Our mission is simple. We hold this position for as long as possible. We buy time for the civilians to evacuate and for reinforcements to arrive. I will not lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. But I have served with every one of you and I know what you are capable of. Today, we show the galaxy what humans are made of. Park out." There was a moment of silence. Then, across the communication channel, Ha heard something strange. The human crew was making noise. It took her a moment to recognize what it was. They were cheering. And the station commander turned to Ha with wide eyes. "They are celebrating their own deaths. These creatures are not sane." Ha did not respond. She was watching the Boundless Dawn as it began to move. The small frigate turned to face the Dominion fleet head-on, its weapons powering up with a soft blue glow. It looked like a small animal preparing to fight a pack of predators. It should have been pathetic. Instead, something about the sight made Ha's feathers stand on end. The attack began without warning, did not bother with demands or threats. He simply ordered his fleet to fire. Hundreds of missiles streaked toward the human frigate. Plasma bolts lit up the void like artificial stars. Energy beams cut through the darkness with deadly precision. The amount of firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. The Boundless Dawn danced. There was no other word for it. The human ship moved in ways that Ha had never seen before. It rolled and twisted, dove and climbed, its engines burning with desperate intensity. Point defense guns screamed as they shot down incoming missiles. The ship's hull sparked and flashed as it deflected glancing blows. And then it fired back. The Boundless Dawn's weapons were not powerful by galactic standards. A single frigate could not match the firepower of 800 warships, but the humans did not try to match firepower. They aimed for specific targets: command ships, communication relays, ammunition stores, fuel tanks. The first Dominion capital ship exploded 40 minutes into the battle. It was a command vessel, responsible for coordinating an entire wing of the fleet. When it died, 30 ships suddenly lost their orders and fell into confusion. The second capital ship died an hour later. The third died 20 minutes after that. Ha watched in stunned silence as the Boundless Dawn tore through the Dominion formation. The humans were not winning. They could not win, but they were making the enemy pay for every shot fired. By the second hour, 11 capital ships had been destroyed. The Dominion fleet was in chaos. Ships were colliding with each other, firing on their own allies, retreating without orders, was screaming commands over the communication channels, but no one was listening. Then the Boundless Dawn took a critical hit. A plasma bolt punched through the frigate's engine section. Fire bloomed in the void as fuel ignited. The ship began to spin, its propulsion systems failing. For a moment, Ha thought it was over. Then Commander Park's voice came over the open channel, calm as ever. "All hands prepare for emergency boarding. We are relocating to the station. Grab your weapons and move to the shuttles. We will continue the fight from there. The Boundless Dawn launched its remaining shuttles while still under fire. Dominion ships tried to intercept them, but the dying frigate put itself between the shuttles and the enemy. It absorbed shot after shot, its hull breaking apart, its systems failing one by one. The last transmission from the Boundless Dawn was a single sentence from Lieutenant. "Sergeant, you owe me 20 credits. I told you we would take out more than 10. Then the frigate exploded. Ha felt tears running down her feathered face. She did not know why she was crying. These were not her people. This was not her fight. But something about watching that small ship die in defiance of impossible odds broke something inside her. The shuttles reached the station moments later. 53 human Marines in combat armor marched through the docking bay with weapons ready. Their faces were hard, their eyes cold. They had just watched their ship die. They had just lost half their crew. And they were not done fighting. Sergeant stopped in front of the station's security chief. She was shorter than most humans, with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid. Her armor was scratched and burned from the escape. "Where do you want us?" she asked. The security chief stared at her. You are going to keep fighting." Smiled, it was not a kind smile. "The Dominion killed our friends. We are going to return the favor. Now tell us where to go or get out of our way." The security chief pointed toward the main corridors. "They will breach through the cargo bays. That is the weakest point." Nodded and turned to her Marines. "You heard the man. Let's go say hello." The humans marched toward the cargo bays without hesitation. Ha watched them go, her heart pounding in her chest. She had seen warriors from 100 species. She had witnessed battles that decided the fate of empires. She had never seen anything like this. I saw humans take the battlefield and comprehended their fearsome reputation. Part 3. The Nature of Predators. The Dominion breached the station 2 hours after the Boundless Dawn was destroyed. They came through the cargo bays exactly as the security chief had predicted. Hundreds of soldiers poured through the shattered airlocks, their weapons firing at everything that moved. Ha had retreated to the command center with the other diplomats. The station's internal cameras showed everything that happened. She did not want to watch. She could not look away. The Dominion soldiers were terrifying creatures. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick scales that could stop most small arms' fire. Their claws were sharp enough to tear through metal. Their teeth were designed for ripping flesh. Each one of them was a killing machine, bred and trained for war since birth. There were over 500 of them in the first wave alone. The 53 human Marines met them in the corridor outside Cargo Bay 7. Ha expected the humans to establish defensive positions. She expected them to hide behind cover and try to hold the line for as long as possible. That was what any sensible force would do when outnumbered 10-1. The humans did not do that. Instead, Sergeant raised her rifle and shouted a single word that Ha's translator could not interpret. Then she led her Marines in a direct charge toward the enemy. The sound of combat filled the station. Gunfire echoed through the corridors. Explosions shook the walls. Screams in a dozen languages mixed with the thunder of weapons. Ha watched through the cameras as the humans tore into the Dominion ranks. They moved with impossible coordination, each Marine covering the others, each shot placed with deadly precision. They did not fight like individuals seeking glory. They fought like a single organism with 53 bodies. A Dominion soldier rushed toward Corporal Han, claws raised for a killing blow. Han did not retreat. He stepped forward inside the creature's reach and pressed his rifle against its throat. The shot blew the soldier's head apart. Han was moving to his next target before the body hit the ground. Sergeant fought at the front of the formation. She was half the size of the Dominion soldiers, but she moved like water, flowing around their attacks and striking at weak points. Her rifle clicked empty. She did not stop to reload. She drew a knife from her belt and kept fighting. A plasma bolt caught one of the Marines in the chest. He fell, smoke rising from the wound. Another Marine grabbed him and dragged him to cover while still firing her weapon. She did not stop shooting. She did not pause to check if he was alive. She trusted that someone else would help him while she continued the fight. This was what Ha did not understand. Every species she had ever encountered fought as individuals. Even soldiers trained to work together would break when the pressure became too great. Fear was universal. Self-preservation was instinct. The humans had no such weakness. They kept advancing, even when wounded, even when dying. A Marine with a missing arm continued to fire his weapon with his remaining hand. Another dragged herself forward on broken legs, still shooting at the enemy. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They simply kept killing until they could not kill anymore. The Dominion soldiers began to falter. Ha saw it in their movements, the way they started to hesitate before engaging the humans. They were not used to this. They were used to enemies who ran, who begged, who broke under pressure. The humans did none of these things. By the end of the first hour, the Dominion had lost 300 soldiers. The humans had lost 12. Warlord sent another wave. 500 more soldiers poured into the station, fresh and eager for blood. They met the humans in the central atrium, a wide open space where the Dominion's numbers should have given them an advantage. It did not. The humans used the space to move, to flank, to strike from unexpected angles. They set traps and ambushes. They used the station's systems against the enemy, venting atmosphere in certain sections, activating fire suppression to blind Dominion troops. They fought with every tool available. Ha watched Corporal hand take a plasma bolt to the shoulder. The wound was severe, burning through armor and flesh. Any sensible creature would have fallen back, sought medical attention, tried to survive. Han did not fall back. He pulled a small torch from his belt and pressed it against the wound. The smell of burning flesh filled the corridor as he cauterized his own injury. His face twisted with pain, but he did not scream. He did not even stop moving. 30 seconds later, he was back in the fight. "They are not real," one of the diplomats beside Ha whispered. "This cannot be real. No species fights like this." But it was real. Ha was watching it happen. The battle continued for 6 hours. Wave after wave of Dominion soldiers crashed against the human position. Each wave left hundreds of dead behind. The station's corridors became rivers of blood, the floors covered with bodies. The humans lost 19 of their 53 Marines. They did not break. They did not run. They simply closed ranks and kept fighting. When the 6th hour ended, the Dominion stopped sending soldiers. The corridors fell silent. The surviving humans gathered in the central atrium, wounded and exhausted but undefeated. Ha counted them through the cameras. 34 Marines remained. Most were injured. Some could barely stand. But every single one of them was still holding a weapon, still watching the corridors, still ready to fight. Sergeant was sitting against a wall, wrapping a bandage around a wound on her leg. Her armor was cracked and burned. Her face was covered in blood that might have been hers or might have belonged to the enemy. When one of her Marines approached her, she looked up and smiled. "Good work," she said. "We held them." The Marine shook his head. "For now, they will come again." "Then we kill them again." Finished wrapping her wound and reached for her rifle. "Someone find me ammunition. And water. I am thirsty." Ha turned away from the screens. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. She had witnessed battles before. She had seen death and violence on scales that would horrify most civilians. This was different. This was not a battle. This was a statement. The humans were telling the Dominion, telling the galaxy, telling everyone who was watching, "We do not break. We do not surrender. If you want to kill us, you will pay in blood for every single one." The Dominion had learned this lesson the hard way. Over 2,000 of their soldiers lay dead in the station's corridors. Their commanders were arguing over the communication channels, blaming each other for the disaster. And somewhere in the darkness of space, Warlord was preparing his final assault. He would not accept defeat. He would burn the station to ash rather than admit that his mighty army had been stopped by 53 humans. Ha knew this was not over. The worst was still to come. But for the first time since the Dominion fleet had arrived, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. I saw humans take the battlefield and comprehended their fearsome reputation. Part 4: The Weight of Will. 12 hours had passed since the boundless dawn was destroyed. Ha left the command center for the first time and walked through the station's corridors toward the human position. She did not know why she was doing this. Part of her wanted to understand these strange creatures. Part of her simply wanted to see them up close. The path to the central atrium took her past she had to step over bodies both Dominion and human. The walls were scorched with plasma burns. The floor was slick with blood. The air smelled of smoke and death. Ha had seen aftermath of battles before. This was different. The Dominion bodies showed signs of precise, efficient killing. Single shots to vital areas. Knife wounds to throats and joints. These humans had not killed in anger or fear. They had killed with the cold calculation of predators. She found the humans in the atrium. Most of them were resting, sitting against walls or lying on makeshift beds. Medical supplies were scattered everywhere. The wounded were being treated by their comrades, amateur surgery performed with steady hands and dark humor. Ha spotted Commander Park in the corner, helping to bandage a civilian's arm. The human woman had a gash across her forehead that she had not bothered to treat. Her uniform was torn and stained with blood, but her hands were gentle as she wrapped the bandage, and her voice was soft as she spoke to the frightened alien. "You will be fine," Park said. "The wound is not deep. Just keep it clean and change the bandage twice a day." The civilian, a small mammalian creature from the outer colonies, stared at her with wide eyes. "Why?" it asked. "Why are you helping us? You could have run. You could have saved yourselves." Park smiled. It was a tired smile, worn down by hours of fighting and loss. But there was warmth in it, and something else that Ha could not identify. "Because someone has to," Park said simply. Ha approached slowly, not wanting to startle anyone. Several Marines noticed her but did not raise their weapons. They simply watched her with tired eyes, too exhausted to see her as a threat. "Commander Park," Ha said, "I am Ambassador Ha of the Collective. May I speak with you?" Park looked up from her work. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and they carried a weight that seemed far too heavy for someone so young. She finished tying the bandage and stood. "Ambassador, I have heard of you. You negotiated the treaty at 3. You know my work. I read the reports. You saved millions of lives with that treaty." Park gestured toward a quiet corner. "Let us talk." They walked away from the other humans, finding a spot where they could speak privately. Ha studied the human commander closely. Park was shorter than average for her species, with black hair cut short for practicality. Her face was plain, but her eyes were sharp. She moved like a hunter, always aware of her surroundings. "I have a question," Ha said. "I have been watching your people fight for 12 hours. I have seen things I cannot explain. I need to understand." "Ask." Ha struggled to find the right words. "You cannot win this battle. Reinforcements are days away. The Dominion will send more soldiers, more ships, more firepower. The logical choice is to negotiate, to surrender, to save as many lives as possible. Why do you keep fighting?" Park was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. "Do you know what humans are, Ambassador? We are the species that runs into burning buildings to save strangers. We are the species that jumps on grenades to protect our friends. We are the species that looks at impossible odds and says, 'Not today.'" She paused, looking out at her wounded Marines. Her expression softened. "We do not fight because we think we will win. We fight because giving up is not in our nature. We fight because some things are more important than survival. Ha shook her head. I do not understand. Survival is the foundation of everything. Without survival, nothing else matters. That is where you are wrong. Park turned to face her directly. There are things worth dying for: freedom, justice, the lives of innocent people. If we surrender, what happens to the civilians on this station? The Dominion does not take prisoners. They take slaves. They take bodies for their labor camps. Children, Ambassador. There are children on this station. Ha felt a chill run through her feathers. She had not thought about the children. So we fight, Park continued. We fight until we cannot fight anymore. We buy time with our lives, and we hope that time is enough. And if it is not enough, at least we die knowing we did everything we could. Before Ha could respond, Lieutenant approached with a portable communicator. His face was grim. Commander, we have intercepted Dominion communications. Is preparing a final assault. Every remaining soldier, every ship, everything they have. He is going to glass the station. Park's expression did not change. How long? 2 hours. Understood. Park turned to Ha. Ambassador, I suggest you return to the command center. This is going to get ugly. Ha wanted to argue. She wanted to tell Park to find another way, to negotiate, to do something other than throw her life away. But she looked into the human's eyes and saw something that stopped her words. Park was not afraid. She was not angry or desperate or resigned. She was simply ready. Ready to fight, ready to die, ready to do whatever was necessary to protect the people in her care. Ha had met warriors from 100 species. She had never met anyone like this. I will stay, Ha said quietly. I want to see how this ends. Park nodded. Then stay close to my Marines. They will protect you. The next 2 hours passed in tense preparation. The humans fortified their position, setting traps and checking weapons. They shared their remaining food and water with the civilians who had gathered in the atrium. They told jokes and stories, laughing at things Ha did not understand. Sergeant taught a young child a game called rock, paper, scissors. The child laughed when she won and smiled like a proud aunt. Corporal Han sat with an elderly alien and listened to stories about his home world. Lieutenant played music from a small device, something soft and sad that made the humans grow quiet. These were not the actions of people preparing to die. These were the actions of people preparing to live, squeezing every moment of joy from the time they had left. Then the alarms began to sound. The Dominion's final assault had begun. Park stood and drew her weapon. Around her, every human did the same. 34 Marines, wounded and exhausted, formed up into ranks. They did not look afraid. They looked determined. Park's voice carried across the atrium. This is it. They are coming with everything they have. We hold this position. We protect these civilians. We make them pay for every inch. Are you with me? The response was immediate and unanimous. Yes, Commander. Park nodded once. Then she turned toward the corridor where the enemy would come and began to walk. Ha watched the humans march toward their deaths. They moved without hesitation, without fear, without doubt. They were going to fight an army that outnumbered them 100 to 1, and they were going to make that army bleed. In that moment, Ha finally understood why the galaxy had learned to fear humans. It was not their technology or their tactics. It was not their strength or their speed. It was their will, an unbreakable, unstoppable, absolutely terrifying will. And she prayed, to God she had not believed in for decades, that it would be enough. I saw humans take the battlefield and comprehended their fearsome reputation. Part 5: The Dawn Breaks. The Dominion's final assault came like a flood. 3,000 soldiers poured into the station from every breach point, their weapons screaming death. They moved without care for their own lives, driven by fury and the shame of their earlier defeat. They wanted blood. They wanted revenge. They wanted to wipe the humans from existence. 34 humans stood in their way. Ha had retreated to the command center with the other civilians, but she kept her eyes on the cameras. She could not look away. Whatever happened next would be burned into her memory forever. The humans met the first wave in the main corridor. They did not try to hold a defensive line. They could not. There were too many enemies, too many angles of attack. Instead, they fought a moving battle, falling back step by step, making the Dominion pay for every meter of ground. Sergeant led the rear guard. She was everywhere at once, shooting, stabbing, throwing grenades. Her rifle ran dry and she picked up a fallen Dominion weapon. When that ran dry, she used her knife. When her knife broke, she used her fists. She was bleeding from a dozen wounds, but she did not stop. She could not stop. Corporal Han dragged a wounded Marine to safety while firing his weapon one-handed. The Marine was missing most of his left arm, but he was still conscious, still trying to fight. Han pushed him behind cover and told him to stay down. The Marine argued. Han ignored him and returned to the fight. Lieutenant had set up a communication relay that let the humans coordinate their movements. His voice was calm over the radio, calling out enemy positions and directing fire. He was not a combat specialist. He was a tactical officer, but he had picked up a rifle and joined the fight anyway. Commander Park was at the center of everything. She moved through the chaos like a ghost, appearing wherever the fighting was thickest. She saved 3 Marines from being overwhelmed by a Dominion squad. She carried a wounded civilian to safety. She shot a Dominion officer who was trying to flank her position. Her movements were precise and economical, wasting nothing, missing nothing. The battle lasted 6 hours. Ha watched the numbers tick down on the tactical display. 34 humans became 30. 30 became 25. 25 became 20. The Dominion lost hundreds, then thousands. Their bodies piled up in the corridors, creating obstacles that their own soldiers had to climb over. The station's floor was invisible beneath the dead. Blood ran in rivers toward the drainage systems. Still the humans fought. 19 became 15. 15 became 12. Ha saw Sergeant take a plasma bolt to the chest. She fell, smoke rising from her armor. For a terrible moment, Ha thought she was dead, then pushed herself up, coughed blood, and raised her weapon. "Is that all you have?" she screamed at the enemy. "My grandmother hits harder than that." She kept fighting for another hour before another bolt caught her in the side. This time, she did not get up. Corporal Han dragged her behind cover and stayed with her, holding her hand while she struggled to breathe. 12 became 10. 10 became 8. The Dominion was breaking. Ha could see it in their movements, hear it in their communications. They had expected an easy victory, a simple cleanup operation. Instead, they had walked into a meat grinder. Their officers were dead. Their morale was shattered. Many soldiers were simply refusing to advance, too terrified of the humans to continue. But would not accept defeat. He ordered his ships to prepare bombardment. If his soldiers could not take the station, he would destroy it from space. Everyone would die. Humans, civilians, his own soldiers. He did not care. Then everything changed. The tactical display flickered. New contacts appeared at the edge of the system. 200 contacts, warships, human warships. The United Earth Navy's 7th Fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a formation that Ha had never seen before. They did not slow down. They did not establish a safe position. They came in at full speed, weapons already firing. At their head was the battleship Eternal Vigil, flagship of Admiral Lee. The massive vessel cut through the Dominion formation like a blade through cloth. Its guns spoke with thunder, and where they pointed, enemy ships died. Ha would later learn that the 7th Fleet had pushed their engines past safety limits, burning out components that would take months to replace. They had arrived 18 hours ahead of schedule. Every captain in the fleet had volunteered to make the sacrifice. No one had ordered them. They had simply done it. Because humans did not abandon their own. The battle in space lasted less than an hour. The Dominion fleet, already damaged and disorganized, crumbled under the human assault. Ships surrendered by the dozen. Those that tried to flee were hunted down. His flagship was surrounded and boarded. The warlord died on his own bridge, killed by a human marine who had lost her brother at Pale Crescent. Inside the station, the surviving Dominion soldiers threw down their weapons and surrendered. They had seen their fleet destroyed. They had watched their warlord die. They wanted no more part of this fight. Ha walked through the corridors after the battle ended. She had to see it for herself. She had to understand what had happened. The dead were everywhere. Dominion soldiers lay in heaps, their bodies twisted and broken. Human marines lay among them, their faces peaceful in death. They had fallen fighting, every single one of them. She found Commander Park in the atrium, sitting against a wall. The human woman was wounded in a dozen places, her uniform more red than blue. Medical teams were working frantically to save the survivors. Park had refused treatment until all her Marines had been seen first. Ha sat beside her. You did it, you held them. Park's eyes were distant. We lost 19 more, only 8 of us left. She paused, her voice cracking. Died 20 minutes before the fleet arrived. 20 minutes if they had been a little faster. You saved 3,000 civilians, Ha said gently. You saved this station. You saved me. Park did not respond for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I keep thinking about their families, my Marines. They trusted me to bring them home, and I failed them. You did not fail them. Ha reached out and placed her hand on Park's shoulder. The gesture was alien to her culture, but she had seen humans do it. They knew what they were fighting for. They chose to stay. They chose to protect strangers they had never met. That is not failure. That is something else entirely. Park looked at her. Tears were running down the human's face, cutting lines through the dirt and blood. What is it then? Ha thought about everything she had witnessed. The impossible stand of the boundless dawn, the humans who charged into overwhelming odds, the Marines who fought through mortal wounds, the fleet that burned itself out to arrive in time. It is heroism, she said. True heroism. The kind that most species only tell stories about. The kind that I never believed existed until today. Years later, when asked to explain humanity's fearsome reputation, Ambassador Ha would tell a simple story. She would describe the Battle of Pale Crescent, the impossible stand, the sacrifice of 53 humans who refused to surrender. And she would end with the same words every time. I once asked a human soldier why her species fights so hard, even when victory is impossible. She looked at me as if the question made no sense. Then she said, "We are not fighting because we think we will win. We are fighting because some things are worth dying for." I had studied war for decades. I had seen 100 species wage campaigns of conquest and survival. But until that day on the Pale Crescent, I had never understood what it truly meant to fight. Humans do not fear death. They fear failing the people they protect, and that is why the galaxy learned to fear them. The Pale Crescent was rebuilt. A memorial was erected in the central atrium, bearing the names of every human who fell in its defense. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see it, to understand what had happened there. And in the center of the memorial, carved in stone, were the words that Commander Park had spoken before the final battle. Some things are more important than survival. The humans had taught the galaxy a lesson that day. It was a lesson written in blood and sacrifice, in courage and defiance. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget.